You ran a coding agent all week and the ChatGPT bill hit 4 figures, while DeepSeek users doing the same job paid almost nothing, and Grok couldn't even show up with a number. Cost, coding accuracy, speed, context limits, deployment, 5 dimensions that decide which model you actually build on. So let's get into it. Test 1, cost. The scenario I kept running into: you spin up a coding agent, it chews through tokens for a week, and the API bill lands like a punch. At $30 per million output tokens for ChatGPT's GPT 5.5, a sustained coding run can cost you hundreds before you've shipped anything, and that's the number that actually matters. I pulled the official API docs for both, and DeepSeek v4 Flash charges 0.28 per million output tokens versus ChatGPT's $30. That's over 100 times cheaper on the same output, and DeepSeek's consumer app is completely free with no ads on top of that. Grok, I went looking for an API price and came up empty. DeepSeek takes cost, and it's not close. A 100x gap on output tokens is the kind of number that changes how you architect an agent, not just how you budget. That puts DeepSeek up 1-0, with ChatGPT and Grok still on 0. I know that gap because I've been deep in these tools long enough to watch it wreck a budget in real time. Drop a comment if a surprise API bill has hit you too. Test 2, coding benchmark performance. The objection I hear all the time is that cheaper models just write worse code, and that a bad fix in production costs way more than a few extra API dollars. SWE Bench Verified is the benchmark that actually measures real software engineering tasks, so that's where I looked, and the gap here is smaller than most people assume. I had to run this twice because the sources actually disagree on ChatGPT's number. OpenAI claims around 88.7% on SWE Bench Verified, but Val's AI puts it at 82.6%, so there's a real spread there. DeepSeek v4 Pro lands at 80.6%, which is right at ChatGPT's lower bound, though the production Flash model drops to 66%, a meaningful gap from the preview. Grok had no published score on this benchmark that I could track down. ChatGPT takes coding accuracy. Even at the lower bound, it's ahead of DeepSeek's best model. And I didn't expect the sources to disagree that much on the exact number, but the direction is consistent. That ties it up at 1 apiece, with Grok still at 0. One of the biggest problems I run into when using AI agents is turning their output into YouTube content I can actually use to market my product. That's why this video is sponsored by Subscriber, a tool that helps business owners connect their AI agents to YouTube and market their products without spending 10 hours every week creating content. You can connect Claude or ChatGPT directly to Subscriber. It then analyzes your business, website, and YouTube channel to help you create SEO-optimized video ideas, scripts, thumbnails, and even complete videos that actually match your brand. What I like most is that every week, Subscriber gives me a list of high-potential video ideas I can immediately execute, and it can even help edit videos for me, with or without my face, including videos like the one you're watching right now. It's easy to get started, and you can try Subscriber for free using the link in the description below. Now back to the video. Test 3, speed. The failure mode that bites hardest in agentic workflows. Your agent is waiting on a model response mid-loop and at 3,800 milliseconds median latency. That wait compounds every single step. For a long coding run with dozens of tool calls, you're literally burning time and money at the same time. And throughput in tokens per second decides how fast your agent can actually think. Watch what happens in reasoning mode. DeepSeek v4 Flash hits 113.5 tokens per second versus ChatGPT's 81.2. And Orca Router's latency data shows DeepSeek at 886 milliseconds median versus ChatGPT Pro at 3,800, about 70% faster on response time. Though I'll note that on non-thinking workloads, the numbers flip and ChatGPT pulls ahead at 79 versus 34 tokens per second, so your config matters. DeepSeek takes speed in reasoning mode, and I was expecting the non-thinking reversal to muddy this more than it did. But for coding agents running in reasoning mode, that's the config that actually matters. That puts DeepSeek ahead 2-1, with Grok still at 0. So DeepSeek is cheaper and faster in reasoning mode, but context and output limits are still ahead. And that's the dimension that decides whether you can actually run a full codebase through one of these models without chunking it up and losing context. And deployment flexibility is right after that, which could change the whole picture depending on how you're shipping. Test 4, context and output limits. The number itself is what gets people. 128,000 max output tokens. Sounds fine until your agent is trying to generate a full module in one pass and it just cuts off mid-function. You're left with broken output you have to stitch back together manually, and that overhead adds up fast when you're running agents at scale. Both ChatGPT and DeepSeek match on context window at 1 million tokens, so that's genuine parity. But on max output, DeepSeek's 384,000 tokens is 3 times ChatGPT's 128,000, which means longer generations, fewer truncation errors, and less manual stitching in your pipeline. Grok, I went looking for both metrics and came back with nothing. Now, the context window is a genuine tie. Both sit at 1 million tokens, and that's real parity on that specific metric, not a rounding situation. The output limit is where the decision actually lives, and a 3x gap on max tokens out is the kind of thing that rewrites how you chunk your agentic tasks. So DeepSeek takes this one clearly on the dimension that moves workflows. DeepSeek wins context and output limits, and I didn't expect the output gap to be that decisive, when context was dead even. 3 times the max output is a real workflow difference, not a spec sheet detail. That's DeepSeek 3, ChatGPT 1, Grok 0. Test 5, Deployment and Modality. The day your client asks for a voice interface on top of the coding agent you just shipped, or needs an image parsed alongside the code, a text-only model is dead in the water. And on the flip side, if your team needs to self-host for compliance reasons, a closed-source model locks you out completely. So both of these failure modes are real depending on what you're building. When I mapped the actual feature sets, ChatGPT's GPT 5.5 covers image, video, and voice. It's a full multimodal platform, while DeepSeek V4 is text-only, full stop. But DeepSeek flips it on deployment. It's MIT licensed, self-hostable, and its API is Anthropic compatible, meaning you can drop it straight into Claude Code as a cheaper engine without rewriting your stack. ChatGPT takes deployment and modality because multimodal breadth is a harder gap to close than API compatibility, and I was honestly surprised DeepSeek's open weight advantage didn't swing it. Image, video, and voice in one platform is a real capability difference. Final score, DeepSeek 3, ChatGPT 2, Grok 0. ChatGPT wins on peak coding accuracy, GPT 5.5, at around 88.7% on SWE bench. Verified is the highest verified number in this matchup. It also wins on modality, image generation, video, and voice in one tool, plus access to Azure AI Foundry, Amazon Bedrock, and a batch API with a 50% discount for non-real-time workloads. DeepSeek wins on everything that matters for sustained coding agent work at scale. $0.28 versus $30 per million to output tokens, 113.5 tokens per second in reasoning mode. 384,000 max output tokens versus 128,000, and an MIT license that lets you self-host and drop it into any Anthropic-compatible harness as a direct engine swap. Grok doesn't win anything in this matchup. I looked across every dimension we tested and came up empty on benchmark scores. API pricing, context limits, all of it. It's named as a competitor here, but the data just isn't there to make a case for it in coding agent work right now. If you're running coding agents at volume and that output token bill is real, DeepSeek is your pick. 3 wins to 2, and the cost gap alone justifies the switch. Go ChatGPT only if you need multimodal in the same tool, or you're chasing that peak SWE bench accuracy and the premium is worth it to you. One thing the docs don't spell out, DeepSeek's API is Anthropic compatible, which means you can literally swap it into Claude Code as the underlying engine without touching your harness code, same prompts, same tool calls, just a different model powering it at a fraction of the cost. Most people building on Claude Code have no idea that option exists. If cost is the thing driving your model choice right now, I did a full breakdown on exactly this question over in DeepSeek R1 versus ChatGPT, which is cheaper. Goes deeper on the pricing math for different usage levels. So check that one out next if you want the full picture on where each model's cost actually breaks even.